All right, welcome back to the second episode of the Combat Cave podcast. We are your hosts, Taylor Merrill and
Patrick Larimer.
Patrick Larimer. So we have a couple things to get into. There were some awesome fights both last weekend, last Saturday, and today. Last Saturday, Max Holloway put on perhaps the best performance of his entire career.
I would agree. Probably, I've never seen. I mean, if you look at his last Saturday's fight and then the fight before that, there's been so much more variety in his style, his striking. I love the fact that he used more elbows. You really can see the level of confidence that he had. His new claim of being the best boxer in the UFC. He looked good, man. He was in shape. Like you said, over 200 strikes and punches.
No, well, so he broke his own record. There was previously the significant strike record that he broke against Brian Ortega was 290 significant strikes in that fight.
Yikes.
This one, he broke it by 155 strikes, so it's 445 significant strikes in one fight. And I was reading something from Mark Raymundi, I think, of ESPN. He tweeted something out that Max threw more strikes just himself in that fight than any two fighters in one fight. Just one side.
Dude, I mean, what little martial art training that I have, they're a kind of like a high intensity workout that I would practice is I would hit the bag and as many combinations that I could for a minute straight. I don't think I get anywhere near 100 before I'm gassed. I mean, a whole minute of 100%, man, that's rough. At the end of the fight, he looked like he still had half a tank left.
Oh yeah,
he wasn't even a bit worried. They're not human beings, man.
Yeah, yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I get Volkanovski he says that he's done with Max for now. I mean, he's getting what he wants. He's fighting Brian Ortega, I think in April, maybe May, something like that. But after that, I mean, in my opinion, I think he's going to beat Ortega. I mean, you never know, but I think he's going to beat him. But after that performance from Max, I just don't know how you can deny him a third try.
Yeah, that guy, so much heart, and they're both strikers. They're both heavy hitters, and they just love throwing out punches, and with near god level of boxing. I mean, with the show that they put on, I think Dana White it would be foolish of him not to give him a third fight.
Yeah. I
mean, I think they both need to fight someone else before that comes, and a little bit of build up to it because we have this Conor fight that's coming up next. I understand that the entertainment people, they have to space out the really, really cool fights because we get like too many awesome fights back to back. Money.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, I don't know if you do that fight. Obviously, you're limited with what's going on in the world right now. I don't know if you wait to see if things open back up later on. You do that fight in New Zealand, Volkanovski's home territory, or what you do with that. But another interesting thing about that fight was that was only the second ever 50-42 scorecard in UFC history.
Where they
just absolute dominance.
Yeah, where it's so heavy on one side and who's a clear victory. But I mean, I've been in a few fights in my life. After like two good punches, I'm done.
Yeah.
That dude ate so many punches.
Yeah. Calvin Kattar is as tough as they come, and that deserves to be noted. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Especially now that I have really expensive teeth, I don't fight anymore.
Sure.
And, typically you go to jail when you fight people if it's not professional.
And you don't have a $4.2 billion company picking up your medical bills. That's all on you.
Yeah, my teeth are expensive. I could buy a nice car with them.
Yeah. So that fight was just I mean, you can't say enough good things about that performance, about Max and about Kattar's toughness in his heart. Oh yeah, dude. That's one of those fights where you wouldn't be surprised at all if Max got one of those non-disclosed locker room bonuses from Uncle Dana. And if he didn't, that's a crime.
Yeah,
he should have.
I would have kind of walked out there and was like, the heck, who was it that got an extra like $50,000 check for doing like a cool spin kick finish?
Oh, recently it was Buckley.
Yeah,
Joaquin Buckley.
They did a cool jump tornado kick and ended it really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 50 G's. And speaking of the money, you don't even have to know the number that Calvin Kattar got paid to know that it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
You start at 7. Yeah, and that's one of those fights where we may look back at that fight and say, there's fighters that kind of decline oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes there's a moment in their career that you can point to and say they were never the same after this. And you can't say it until you see them perform again, but that may be that fight where you look back at Calvin Kattar's career and you're like, well,
that was the fight.
That's what took it out of him.
Mm-hmm. Whether it's emotionally or more cases physically, just some of the torture you put your body through just fighting as a profession. Part of the job description is getting beat up.
Yeah.
Getting bones broken and dislocated joints and cuts and bruises and lost teeth.
Yeah.
So expensive.
And if you're a top 15 guy, you're a contender in that division, and you just see, Calvin Kattar was ranked number 6 when he fought Max. You see the enormous gap between number 1 and number 6. If you're in that division, you're a contender in that division, you see Max and you see Volkanovski. You can't, I don't know how you could look at either of those two and just not feel just completely overwhelmed. And just your confidence just immediately diminished.
Right? Especially if you're like the number 5 fighter and you see that, you're just like, how am I supposed to get there?
It's a rough go.
I can definitely see how it's discouraging. I guess in a lot of people's cases, they do have those who have that mentality when they do see that gap, they step up their game a whole lot. But, when it comes down to it, these people, I don't think I can train enough. It comes down to genetics eventually. Doesn't matter how age and genetics. Experience will take you really far. A lot of hard work will take you really, really far. But once you get to age or better genetics, as someone who, would be deemed a fine specimen as far as, huge human beings, as Francis Ngannou, that dude's got genetics that are just near inhuman.
Yeah.
He's a giant almost. He is a giant. What is he, almost 300 pounds?
I think he, I think he's, before I think he cut to 265. I'm not sure about that. But now I think he walks around like 256.
Nice.
Yeah, he looks, he's 6'5", and he's obviously just absolutely jacked. So he just looks absolutely enormous. But yeah, that Holloway fight was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So the other thing was Michael Chiesa fought today. Fought Neil Magny.
Right.
And
phenomenal grapplers.
Yeah. And the thing that stood out to me right off the bat was just, obviously I knew this before, most people should know this, that just like MMA math doesn't work, jiu-jitsu belt math also doesn't work.
What do you mean by belt math? Some of our viewers might not know what belt math means.
So, in thinking really simplistically, some people may be under the assumption that if you're a higher rank in any martial art, but, we'll just pick jiu-jitsu, if you're a higher rank, you should be better than people of a lower rank.
Right. If you're a black belt versus a white belt.
Right. Now, I mean that most I would say nearly all of the time. I can't imagine when that wouldn't be true. But in this situation, Neil Magny is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and Michael Chiesa is a purple belt. So
Right.
Magny's ranked higher. It didn't look that way at all.
No. And like you were saying, the belt math or MMA math, on paper and in front of your, I guess, in like a jiu-jitsu dojo or something, you have to show a level of skill and performance, and maybe his technique while he's being watched, execute a proper roundhouse trick, and according to your speed, power, placement, and form, okay, you fill the box, you get a check, you get your new belt, and that's fine and good in the dojo, but when it comes to in the ring, when it actually matters, it's making your money, you're getting paid to do it, or in a scrap in real life, the hungrier dog, the one who has more motivation, the person who wants it more, along with more real-time experience.
Right.
I mean, when you have experience a bunch in the dojo where you're practicing and you're not actually hitting, you're not actually choking out, and they're not fighting for near almost their life, and with purpose to hurt the other individual, it's kind of a different mentality.
Yeah. And there's also some other attributes that would sway the advantage in one way or the other if other attributes are equal. So let's say, we would have to see them roll specifically to know this, but even then it may not answer it. But let's say that Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny both have the same level of skill in jiu-jitsu. I thought that Michael Chiesa was obviously stronger. So equal skill, but one guy's stronger. The guy who's stronger ought to win, right? And I think that played a big part into it too. I mean, he had well over 10 minutes by the end of the fight, well over 10 minutes of ground control time. And it was, Magny had less than a minute. So, I mean, it was just like, no disrespect to Magny at all, obviously. He didn't quit at all in that fight, not a single moment. He was always trying, but it really looked like a man with a child.
Yeah. And, like you said, props to Magny, and he had some great maneuvers, great skill. I mean, you can see it. It's just the person his opponent, he just knew all of those. He knew how to get out of those.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I always believe in fighting your fight. When you know someone is just as good as you are in grappling, I'm not going to grapple with him.
Yeah.
Even if that's my strong suit, but I know that's also his real strong suit. I have to adapt in some way to where it's going to give me an edge. Even if we're going to talk about guns at some point, if you're going to wear body armor, well, go buy armor-piercing bullets.
Right. Yeah. You want to magnify your advantages and then kind of diminish your opponent's advantages, what they do best. At the end, man, Chiesa called out Donald Trump Jr., aka Colby Covington. Dude,
so why do they call him that?
No, they don't. He just is crazy. Part of his whole shtick is the Donald Trump thing. He's when Trump was president. He was just
no longer as of today.
Yeah, I mean, he went to the White House. He would always just wear the MAGA hat. Oh yeah, they were super tight, super buddies. And it's going to be interesting to see how Colby kind of markets himself now that he can't use the Trump shtick anymore because he lost.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, Chiesa called him out. So my initial thoughts on that fight, obviously Chiesa made it all 5 rounds, and he did not look exhausted by the end of it, but he was visibly tired. I think that they're most likely very, very equal grapplers. I think Colby's a much better striker, and I think that Colby probably has a better gas tank. So initially, I would favor Colby in that fight.
Me too.
I mean, my thoughts are always liable to change as it gets closer, but I mean, props to Michael Chiesa being number 8, going right to number 1, calling out number 1.
Lots of confidence there.
Yeah,
I mean, he went straight for the head honcho, man. Head hunting over here.
yeah. So big call out.
Has he reacted yet? Did he react after the and like, did he tweet anything about it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't checked.
I have to check on that.
I haven't checked. Yeah, for sure.
I'll get back to y'all with it.
So should we get into breaking down Conor, Dustin?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Conor and Dustin.
Yep. This Saturday, January 23rd, the rematch: Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. Super interesting. We've got their stats and their records in front of us. Pretty even experience. Yeah. Dustin,
they're
20,
they're both southpaws?
They're both southpaws, yeah. Yeah, both southpaws. Both same height, obviously same weight. Conor's got 2-inch reach, same age. So there's no significant physical advantages. 2-inch reach is pretty negligible. But yeah, pretty evenly matched up physically.
I wonder how Dustin. So, I mean, as much of a fan as I am for Conor, what shuts him down is superior grappling. And we haven't seen Conor fight in a long time. It's been over a year now, and Dustin's been staying sharp.
Yeah,
he's been relatively active. I haven't paid too much attention to him as far as how his fight style is changing, or how his fight IQ has increased, or if it has at all, or if he's pretty much just sticking to the same thing and has just honed what was already there. Excuse me. But last fight was kind of a last time they fought. It was kind of a quick.
Yeah.
I didn't even think it went a whole minute.
Yeah, no. Conor put him away early. Super early.
It was kind of a weird punch that he did, or a weird something.
Yeah, I caught him with that left hand, kind of behind the ear, not flush with the chin or anything like that. But I mean, Conor has such immense power. That power is a real equalizer, and just
it's actually deceptive too. It's a deceptive amount of power. You'd look at Conor, not that he's not in shape, but he's not particularly like huge.
No.
But that dude's got some hands.
Yeah, no, and he doesn't force it either. It's all smooth and timing and power and shot placement. There's no rushing anything with him.
I very rarely have ever seen Conor throw a 100% full effort punch.
Right.
Maybe he probably just stays comfortable at around a 50% power, and every now and then when he sees a money shot, he'll unleash to maybe the 7%. But I've never seen him just a full-out whale punch, swinging with your eyes closed, with just trying to. Not that he's ever been in that kind of situation, but just a full-fledged punch like we saw earlier. Hafthor had an exhibition match, and they mentioned a lot that he was headhunting and throwing really, really heavy, fast punches, or they weren't fast at all, slow punches.
Right.
But they're so wild and they're so easily telegraphed. It's I think that's what gives Conor such an edge, is he never telegraphs a huge punch like that. Everything's very precise and controlled.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Conor's kind of keys to victory in this fight are, one, he kind of just has to be Conor, and I know that's a really simplistic way of putting it, but really wise shot selection. He has to turn Dustin into his power, into his left hand where all that power is. He can do that with kicks, with footwork. Obviously, he's got to get right to it early. He has to just get right after it and start taking it out of Dustin, and wearing him out. And the common, or the regular theme that Conor has to pay attention to in his fights is managing his cardio. Because he comes out so fast and so furious in those first 1 or 2 rounds, if you don't put a guy like Dustin Poirier away, who has 5-round cardio, for sure, it's going to be a long night for Conor.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, Conor typically is a first 3-round fighter. He tears you up really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
The first 3 rounds, and then he kind of just coasts the second round and slowly picks you down because you've already just been turned into ground meat by then.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at this record. Conor has 22 wins and 4 losses, 2 of his wins are by decision. He has 1 submission, and that was not in the UFC. That was earlier on in his career. I don't know if that was King of the Cage or what that was, but it was early on in his career. And then 19 out of 22 wins are by KO.
The hands.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective with Dustin, he has 7 wins by decision, 7 by submission, and then 12 by knockout. 26-6 overall for Dustin. So I think what Dustin has to do is he obviously has to circle away from Conor's power hand. He can't let himself get lulled into any of those traps. Can't really bite heavy on any of Conor's feints. And he has to control the pace. He has to find a way to take something out of Conor early. Mm-hmm. And whether he does that by attacking the legs, whether he does that by trying to land heavy shots of his own, or threaten with a takedown.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no easy thing to take Conor down. Conor has a 70% takedown defense. But Dustin has to do something in that first and second round to make it grueling and make it bloody and get Conor to a position where he's exhausted, because as we know, fatigue makes cowards of us all. And when you can take something out of a guy, even a high level fighter like Conor, you can get him into a position where he's not going to want to be there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Dustin has to do. He has to make it ugly. He has to make it a dogfight early.
Not fun.
Yeah, and that's not. I mean, it's way easier said than done against a guy like Conor. I mean, you got to survive before you can thrive against that guy.
I agree, man. He, from just looking at their records, 7 of them are submission. That kind of gives me a little hope for him, that he'll recognize the difference between their stand-up game. Not that Dustin doesn't have a great stand-up game. He has 12 wins by KO.
Phenomenal boxing.
Yeah. And to say that they're equal in boxing, I think I tend to lean towards Conor is a little bit more superior.
Me too.
But I definitely for sure would say that Dustin is superior in grappling. But like you said, Conor knows this, and he has trained himself very well to not get on the ground.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I imagine that's a lot of what he focused on in the Khabib fight. And I'm sure he's staying on top of that now. But if you're Dustin, you're looking at, obviously you got to pay attention to all aspects of it, and you don't want to get caught on the feet. But if you're looking at Conor's record, all 4 of his losses come by way of submission. He's never been knocked out, never lost a decision. So, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Sometimes when you go into a fight, you think, okay, Dustin has plenty of knockouts. He's knocked out some really tough guys. He can obviously scrap. That his last fight with Dan Hooker was just an absolute dogfight, absolute bloodbath. It was amazing. But you never know if a guy is going to decide, hey, what people are expecting is me to stand up with this guy and to try to finish him on the feet and make this really entertaining. You never know if a guy is going to take a different approach and say, well, in all likelihood, the safest way for me to approach this fight is to try and take him down and submit him.
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see what he does.
I am not a person of showmanship. I just, in this type of industry like the UFC is, a lot of it is showmanship. That's why Conor's been so successful. He's not only is he a great fighter, but his showmanship skills, getting people hyped, his attitude, his persona. Some people would like to say that he's kind of an unpleasant person to be around, and he has a temper. Well, it's true, but people like watching that stuff.
Yeah.
And Conor knows it, and he capitalizes on it. And then in the ring, putting on a good show, people want to see blood. People want to hear that contact when you get punched in the face. People want to see people's arms get broken. They want to see the damage. And Conor's really good at capitalizing that. But if I were fighting Conor, I wouldn't, or if I was fighting period, I just, I'd do whatever it takes to win. Right. A win is a win, whether it looks good or not.
Yeah, no, there's always kind of that balance between putting on an impressive performance, and then just doing what you need to do to win and advance your career. Especially, I don't know how much this actually weighs on these lightweight fighters that are fighting next or this weekend. But Khabib met with Dana last weekend before the Holloway Kattar fight.
Dude, yes.
Yeah, and
He might
Khabib.
come back.
Yeah, Khabib said if any of these guys in these two lightweight fights impress me, then I'll consider coming out of retirement. You gotta always think if that's gonna have any impact on their performance, and if it's in the back of their mind, like I kind of got to get a finish. I got to do something spectacular. I mean, I imagine Conor always planned on finishing Dustin. I imagine that's what Conor wants to do in every fight. But you always kind of have to, or you have to wonder now if having, or Khabib having said that, if Conor, knowing that he wants that rematch, knowing that he wants to draw Khabib out, if he's even more motivated now to get a spectacular finish and try and bring Khabib out of retirement, get that second fight. So
the fight would be, oh man,
yeah,
two people that are just hella arrogant, hella proud.
Yeah, I mean, especially
tons of skill.
If you believe Conor when he says that he didn't take the first fight seriously and he didn't really train, and that his foot was injured and all of these different things. If you believe all of that and you believe that was a suboptimal Conor, and you never know. I mean, that's kind of how rematches are sold, right? And I'm not saying that these are excuses, but they're also excuses. Mm-hmm. If you lose like that, you have to provide people some kind of thought process to talk them into and to sell them why the second fight would be more competitive. So if you can get people to believe that you weren't training, that your foot was injured, all of these different things, and they may have reason to believe the fight may go down differently. So if you believe Conor, and maybe he's telling the truth, maybe he's not, then yeah, maybe that second fight is different. But either way, we know why Uncle Dana would want it, right? Exactly. So going over the odds real quick
that would be probably the most grossing fight in the UFC if that happens.
Yeah, well, the first one smashed the pay-per-view record. I think the first one did 2.4 million. It's the first UFC pay-per-view to do over 2 million buys. Oh, so yeah, that rematch, especially like let's say Conor does what he says he's going to do and he finishes Dustin in under 60 seconds. Let's say he goes out there and murders him. I mean, if you're Khabib, how could you not?
Right. I would be interested.
Yeah.
If I was with Khabib, like, okay, all right, we may have something here.
Do you think the second one could do 3? Let's say Conor puts on an impressive performance and Khabib comes back. Let's say they wait until they get fans, like end of this year. You think it does 3? I think it could.
I think it would do more.
Yeah.
I would say nearly closer to 3.5, especially if they, get this hype up like they do.
Yeah, with enough time to promote it correctly. And then they don't like to do this when, sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties that I'm going to have to figure out with this camera. So I think we got cut off before we started talking about the odds. The interesting thing about this fight is that the odds when they opened after the fight was confirmed in October, Conor started at a minus 180 favorite and Dustin at a plus 155 underdog. And now that we are less than a week out from the fight, Conor is a much more sizable favorite at minus 315 and Dustin a bigger underdog at plus 245. So I think that the odds don't reflect how close the fight is. I think Dustin's much more in this fight than the odds might reflect. Conor is the deserving favorite. He does have a win over Dustin, obviously. And looking at the style matchup, he does have some unique advantages, but I do think that the odds should be a little closer.
Mm-hmm. And considering the record that Dustin has in his current activity, he's been more active. He's been fighting often. Conor hasn't fought in over a year. Dustin's staying sharp.
Yeah.
He's got a few wins under his belt. Going into this fight, I firmly believe in the pain helps you learn. So,
Sure.
he knows, I'm going into a fight. I can't help but think that professional fighters will watch their old fights before they do a rematch, especially if it is a rematch.
Yeah.
See where they went wrong, capitalize on their mistakes and go forward. So I will agree. I agree that the odds are not only have they doubled since it got announced till now, but 240 plus 245. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, he did get knocked out pretty quick in his last fight, but
But their first fight.
yeah, the first fight. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And man, like you said, Connor's the deserving favorite. Not only popularity, record, and he's beaten him.
Yeah.
I can definitely see like a minus, like it was like a minus 155 and 180. That seemed pretty. No, I'm sorry, a plus 55 and minus 180. I can see how that kind of was like, okay, that's not too incredibly terrible. It's for two fighters who are similar, who have good records, good experience, prime of their life, great records,
Yeah.
good finishes, both very aggressive fighters.
Yeah. So although I do think the odds should be closer, I do have Conor winning, and I'm going to pick him to win by TKO in the second round.
I'm going to say that he's going to do in the third round. TKO in the third round. It doesn't seem like Conor's a person to submit. He's always looking for the knockout.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see a good drawn out fight where they're just going at each other and Dustin really came up and Conor, got wore out. Whatever. I'd like to see this, tussle for a long time, but just Conor's, near prodigy fighting IQ. It's hard to beat. He's gonna have to circle around away from that strong side of Conor's, and them both being southpaws, they're constantly just gonna be circling around each other. Conor's footwork is awesome. I haven't paid too much attention on Dustin's ground game, but I feel like that's going to be the thorn in Conor's side, is that he has to capitalize on the ground game. Right. Conor's grapple defense is also spectacular. He doesn't like being on the ground, and he knows it. So he trains very hard to make sure that he doesn't get there or get up very fast after he is taken to the ground.
Yep. It's interesting you bring up them both being southpaws, because now, when you're a southpaw and you're fighting an orthodox fighter, your lead hand are on opposite sides, but they kind of meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you throw your power hand, they kind of meet on that same side. But when you're both orthodox or you're both southpaw, now all of a sudden the jab matters, because the jab can sneak through the guard. Whereas Conor is most of the time used to fighting orthodox fighters. Same thing with Dustin. So there's a ton of hand fighting with those lead hands. That's not going to be present. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. Dustin has an amazing jab. Conor obviously jabs a lot to measure distance and measure range, and he uses it as a tool for timing as well. So it'll be. I'm actually really, really excited to see who, if either of them, implements the jab. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
I agree.
So
excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
It'll be fun. Make sure you guys tune in to that this Saturday on ESPN Plus. And thank you again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please follow us on Instagram at Combat Cave Podcast. And we're going to do another episode on Sunday after the fights. So thank you guys.
If you have any questions, leave your questions in the comments, and we will try to answer them best we can, or how we could possibly make the show better.
Yeah, and you're gonna bet your rent money on it being a draw, right? Goodbye,
Sure.
Goodbye, guys.